You are not as free as you think. Freedom, as you've been taught, is the ability to choose. But the most insidious illusion of the modern age is the belief that you are choosing, when in truth, you are reacting. Reacting to wounds unhealed. Reacting to patterns inherited. Reacting to memories you no longer remember, but your nervous system never forgot. You think you chose that partner, that career, that path. But what if I told you, it was the child inside you who was terrified of abandonment? The shadow inside you, thirsty for validation. The unconscious fear of failure, whispering every step you took. What if I told you that your life has not been authored, it has been automated? This is not judgment. This is the truth that hurts before it heals. The unconscious is not a myth. It is a force, ancient, potent, and largely invisible, dictating the rhythm of your life like an unseen puppeteer. And until you pull back the curtain, you will go on calling its commands your own choices. You will call the chaos destiny. You will name the repetition bad luck. Carl Jung didn't speak in metaphors. He spoke in revelations. When he said the unconscious directs your life, he meant it literally. The repressed becomes reactive. The avoided becomes automatic. The unexamined becomes fate. You have spent years improving your outer life. Earning more. Looking better. Achieving what the world told you mattered. But if your inner world is a battlefield of buried wounds and forgotten selves, nothing will ever feel enough. The invitation is this: stop chasing outcomes. Start confronting origins. This is not self-help. This is self-excavation. This is not about changing your life. It's about reclaiming the one that was hijacked the moment you stopped looking inward. The unconscious is not your enemy. But it is your task. And it begins here. Now, descend. And see what has been steering your life from the dark. The world applauds choice. You are told that your ability to choose is sacred. It's the crown jewel of your freedom. But no one tells you that your choices are often made long before you are aware of them. You think you picked that career, that city, that person. No. Often, it was your fear of failure. Your hunger for approval. Your silent agreement with shame. The unconscious is not passive. It's predictive. It scans the past, codes your trauma, and then scripts your future to match. You didn't fall in love, you followed a pattern. You didn't get stuck, you recreated a familiar prison. You didn't get unlucky, you repeated a silent contract written by a younger you who didn't know better. Free will is real. But it is earned, not given. And most people never earn it. Because to earn it, you must wrestle with ghosts. You must peel back the layers of performance, inherited belief, and trauma-coded instinct. You must realize that your preferences were planted by culture, by parents, by fear. The partner you think is your type. Maybe they're just the shape of your childhood wound. The job you believe defines you. Maybe it's just the only way you've ever felt worthy. This is not a comfortable realization. But it is the only one that leads to liberation. Because once you begin to question what drives your yes, your no, your desire, your disgust, only then do you begin to awaken. And in that awakening, free will begins. Not as power. But as presence. Not as the ability to do whatever you want, but the clarity to finally see why you want it at all. This is the death of illusion. And the birth of authorship. The unconscious is not chaos. It is design. Intricate, intelligent, ancient design. It is not a random pit of forgotten memories, but a blueprint that quietly governs your perception, your impulses, your identity. It has structure. Layers. Logic. But it does not speak in words. It speaks in symbols. In dreams. In instincts. In the irrational certainty that something feels off, or irresistibly magnetic. Imagine a house you live in but have never fully explored. Rooms you don't enter. mirrors you avoid, walls you don't realize are even there. That house is your psyche. And the unconscious is the part of the house that keeps the lights dimmed. Inside it live the archetypes, the universal characters that shape your myth, the hero, the orphan, the trickster, the lover. Inside it lives the shadow, everything you were told not to be, so you hid it. Inside it lives the inner child, wounded, watchful, and still waiting for someone to finally see them. The unconscious holds every part of you you couldn't make room for. Every desire you were told was too much. Every anger that was punished. Every gift you buried to stay good. It's the reason you're drawn to the same kind of person, not because you like them, but because something unresolved in you recognizes them. It's the reason you resist change, not because you're lazy, but because the unknown threatens the defense system built for your survival. The unconscious is not against you. It is protecting you, in outdated ways. It is the guardian of the past, trying to help you repeat only what you survived. But healing doesn't come from survival. It comes from integration. Until you map the architecture, you will be a tenant in your own body. You will keep locking yourself in rooms labeled safety that are really just fear in disguise. But once you begin to explore, to shine light into the basement, to name what lives in the attic, something miraculous happens. You stop reacting. You start relating. You stop reenacting. You start rewriting. This is the work. Not fixing yourself, but finally seeing the house you live in. So you can choose, at last, to inhabit it fully. The unconscious is rarely loud. It doesn't knock on your door screaming. It whispers through your habits. It hides behind your preferences. It walks quietly in your assumptions. But if you pay attention, you can catch its footprints. You can trace the outline of what's really guiding you. Here are the signs. You find yourself in the same relationship, again and again, different faces, same wounds. You fear stillness. Silence makes you uncomfortable. You stay busy, not because you have to, but because you're terrified of what might rise in the quiet. You seek chaos and intensity, and call it passion. You crave connection, but push people away when they get close. You say yes when you mean no, just to avoid being abandoned. You sabotage peace, because peace feels foreign. None of these are personality traits. They are protective strategies built by your unconscious to keep you safe from what once hurt you. The people you're drawn to. They're familiar, not always in a good way. Often, they mirror the parent who withheld love, the sibling who bullied, the friend who betrayed. You feel chemistry not because it's right, but because it's recognizable. You're not unlucky. You're looping. And your unconscious is the director of the loop. Until you recognize the signs, you'll keep mistaking protection for preference, and trauma for truth. But recognition is the first break in the cycle. It's the moment the unconscious gets called into the light. It's the second you stop asking, why does this keep happening to me, and start asking, what inside me keeps choosing this? This is the pivot, from victimhood to responsibility. Not blame. Responsibility. Because if you can see the pattern, you can rewire the script. And if you can name the ghost, it no longer has to haunt you. Awareness is not a light switch. It is a slow turning toward. A ritual of returning to the parts of yourself you were taught to ignore. Making the unconscious conscious is not about force, it is about honesty. Radical, relentless honesty. It is about sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it. About feeling the anger you buried. About naming the grief you denied. About holding the shame that shaped you. You begin by listening. To the emotions you silence. To the patterns you justify. To the dreams that feel too strange to matter. You pay attention to the resistance, because resistance is revelation. Every place you avoid is a map to the part of you that needs attention. Shadow work. Inner child work. Somatic practices. Journaling with no censorship. Therapy that doesn't just treat symptoms but invites depth. You ask questions like, what am I afraid to feel? When did I first feel this? What role am I playing in this dynamic, and why does it feel familiar? You stop trying to become someone. And you start remembering who you were before the forgetting. The unconscious becomes conscious not through control, but through compassion. Not by dissecting it with cold logic, but by holding it with warm presence. Because what hides in the dark is not evil, it is exiled. And what has been exiled does not need punishment. It needs welcome. The moment you name the part of you that's scared, or angry, or needy, it loses its power to sabotage you from the dark. It steps into the light. And waits to be integrated. Integration is not about fixing yourself. It's about reclaiming every part of you that you exiled to survive. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole, not perfect, but whole. It is not about improvement. It is about integration. It begins the moment you stop trying to be good, or right, or lovable, and start being real. To individuate is to welcome home the liar, the coward, the addict, the pleaser, the manipulator, not to glorify them, but to meet them. To ask, why were you created? Because every part of you formed in response to something. Every mask you wear was once a shield. Individuation does not require you to destroy your shadow. It asks you to dance with it. It asks, can you walk with your pain without letting it drive? Can you witness your jealousy without shame? Can you make room for your anger without letting it devour your kindness? This is not self-help. This is soul work. It is realizing that the shadow is not a flaw. It is a function. It carries truth you were not ready to hold. And now, if you're willing, you can. You can trace the line from your fears to your gifts. You can feel the thread between your wounds and your wisdom. And when you do, when the unconscious becomes conscious and the shadow becomes integrated, something extraordinary happens. You stop being at war with yourself. You no longer need the world to affirm you, because you have become your own home. You no longer need to project your darkness onto others, because you are strong enough to hold it. You no longer chase wholeness in another, because you have found the lost pieces inside you. Individuation is not a destination. It is a continual unfolding. A peeling away of false selves. A daily remembering of the self, the you beneath the wounds, the masks, the roles. The self is not something you build. It is something you uncover. It has always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the shame, beneath the conditioning. And the moment you begin to live from this place, not from your persona, not from your wound, but from your center, that is the moment fate loosens its grip. You stop living a story written by fear. You start writing a life authored by awareness. This is what it means to make the unconscious conscious. Not just to see it, but to live differently because of what you saw. Fate. We say the word with reverence, fear, resignation. As if it were written in the stars. As if we had no say. But fate is rarely a divine script. More often, it is a psychological loop, a story written by the parts of you that haven't been seen. You call it destiny when you date the same person again. You call it bad luck when you keep quitting right before success. You call it misfortune when every path seems to lead to the same dead end. But maybe, just maybe, it's not the world repeating. It's you. A pattern you haven't named. A belief you haven't challenged. A wound you haven't healed. What you call fate is often the unconscious trying to protect you through repetition. It gives you what you survived, not what you need. Because to the unconscious, familiar is safe. Even if it's painful. The universe is not punishing you. It's mirroring you. It's showing you the parts of yourself you've disowned. It's giving you a chance, again and again, not to suffer, but to see. Until you see the pattern, you are trapped in it. Until you name the archetype, you are ruled by it. Until you own the shadow, it owns you. This is the hidden mercy of fate, it repeats what you refuse to feel. Not to torment you, but to wake you up. And when you wake up, truly wake, the loop loses power. You begin to notice the red flags before they bleed. You hear the old script and choose not to speak it. You feel the pull of the past and gently say, not this time. That is the moment fate becomes choice. That is the moment the pattern becomes a portal. You are not cursed. You are invited. Invited to meet the self beneath the survival story. Invited to rewrite the ending. Invited to live the life you were always meant to live, not because it's guaranteed, but because now, at last, you are present enough to choose it. The unconscious does not just shape your thoughts. It governs your energy, how you use it, how you lose it, and what you avoid by staying busy. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the space where truth has room to surface. But for most of us, stillness feels unsafe. It threatens the protective illusion that constant movement equals purpose. Why do you scroll when you're tired? Why do you overwork when you're already empty? Why do you fill every pause with noise? Because stillness invites something deeper than rest, it invites confrontation. Of self. Of shadow. Of silence. Of sadness. The unconscious resists stillness because it knows stillness is how you meet it. So it keeps you running. Performing. Pleasing. Escaping into thought, consumption, and comparison. But every escape is energy drained. Every distraction is a leakage of your power. And over time, this depletion becomes your identity. You don't just feel tired, you become someone who doesn't remember what rested feels like. You think energy comes from productivity. But true energy comes from alignment. When your inner world is unburdened, you don't have to hustle to feel alive. Stillness is not passive. It is active receptivity. It is the bold refusal to run. It is the radical act of letting what is actually there arise, without suppression, judgment, or disguise. And in that sacred quiet, the unconscious has nowhere to hide. You begin to hear its voice, not as sabotage, but as story. Not as chaos, but as memory. Not as danger, but as the doorway to depth. Stillness gives you back your power, not because it adds anything, but because it stops everything that was scattering you. This is the beginning of energetic mastery, not controlling your energy, but no longer wasting it on war within. Not accumulating more, but leaking less. Not seeking intensity, but honoring inner integrity. To be still is to return to the ground of your being. And that ground, once felt, cannot be shaken. Detachment is not indifference. It is not emotional numbness. It is not a shield against pain. True detachment is clarity, the ability to see without distortion. Most people mistake attachment for love and detachment for apathy. But this is a confusion born from wounded longing. Attachment says, I need you to be okay. Detachment says, I can love you and still be okay. Attachment clings. It grips. It panics when control slips. Detachment observes. It holds lightly. It trusts what is real will remain. You were taught that to care means to carry. That to love means to sacrifice your truth. That letting go is giving up. But what if letting go is loving better? What if detachment is the highest form of presence, one that honors the other without abandoning the self? Detachment is not distance. It is discernment. It allows you to step back, not to disappear, but to see. To see the situation without projection. To see the other without idealization. To see yourself without self-abandonment. When you are attached, you are not in relationship, you are in possession. The other becomes an object to soothe your fear. When you are detached, you are present, truly present. Not to manage, fix, or control, but to witness and engage from truth. This is not easy. Because attachment often feels like love, especially if love was once inconsistent, conditional, or painful. But the ache of detachment is not the ache of loss. It is the ache of reality returning. Detachment is the choice to stay with yourself. To not run after what pulls you out of alignment. To not beg for what isn't freely given. It is the practice of inner loyalty. It is the art of holding space for others while anchoring in your own ground. Only in detachment can true connection arise. Because only then are you loving from wholeness, not hunger. Not as a strategy, but as a state of being. Not from lack, but from light. There is a turning point in every inner journey, the moment you stop reacting from your wounds and begin observing them. This is the birth of the inner witness. The observer. To become the observer is not to escape experience, but to deepen it. It is to step back without stepping out. It is to hold space for your emotions without being held hostage by them. You are angry, and you know you are angry. You are anxious, and you see the anxiety rising. You feel the urge to please, to run, to sabotage, and you witness the urge without becoming it. This witnessing creates space. And space is where choice is born. The unconscious thrives in urgency. It feeds on compulsion. But when you observe, you slow the cycle. You interrupt the spell. You shift from puppet to presence. The observer does not fix. It notices. It doesn't rush to solve the pain. It says, there is pain here. It doesn't shame the reaction. It says, this is the pattern. And in that simple act of witnessing, alchemy begins. The ego fears observation, because observation reveals truth. And truth dismantles illusion. It unravels the stories you told yourself to survive. But survival is not the same as living. And unless you observe, you will repeat. You will replay the same fight with different faces. You will relive the same abandonment under different names. You will mistake familiar pain for fate. Observation ends the trance. It does not silence the unconscious, it translates it. It doesn't banish the shadow, it gives it language. It doesn't make life easier, it makes it clearer. To become the observer is to reclaim your mind from the reflexes of your past. To stop being a character in a story you didn't write, and start becoming its author. The observer is not a destination. It is a daily practice. A breath between reaction and response. A pause before the pattern plays out. A choice to see, really see, before you act. And from that seeing, your life begins to shift. Not because the world changes, but because now you are here. Not as a puppet. Not as a ghost. But as a conscious witness of your becoming. There comes a moment in your journey, not marked by fanfare, not celebrated with applause, when you realize something has changed. Not outside. Inside. You are no longer seeking transformation. You are living it. You no longer rush to fix your triggers. You sit with them. You no longer demand certainty. You learn to rest in mystery. You no longer try to escape discomfort. You ask it what it came to teach. This is the final shift, from resistance to relationship. From improvement to integration. From control to communion. You begin to see everything, the wound, the joy, the grief, the longing, not as obstacles, but as invitations. You stop making enemies of your own emotions. You stop dividing your experience into good and bad, spiritual and broken, evolved and not enough. You no longer chase healing. You embody wholeness. Because you've understood, healing is not becoming someone new. It is returning to who you were before the world taught you to forget. The unconscious has not disappeared. It never will. But now it no longer drives. Now you meet it as an equal, a messenger, not a master. You don't fear the pattern. You recognize it. You don't avoid the shadow. You walk beside it. You don't idolize the light. You root in the real. You walk into your life with open eyes. You trust yourself to see clearly. You trust yourself to choose differently. Not because you are perfect. but because you are present. And that presence, raw, honest, unpolished, is what sets you free. This is the final shift. The quiet revolution. The end of the trance. The beginning of a life authored in awareness. Will you remember that awareness is not a moment, but a practice? That freedom is not found in fixing, but in feeling. That clarity does not come from certainty, but from stillness. Will you remember that the unconscious is not a flaw to fight, but a landscape to explore? That every shadow is a doorway. That every trigger is a compass. That silence is not absence, it is instruction. You came here seeking insight. But insight alone is not enough. Knowledge without embodiment is just decoration. Understanding without action is another form of avoidance. So sit. Close your eyes. Breathe. Let everything you've read pass through your body, not just your mind. Let it settle where it stirs. Let it awaken what it was meant to. And ask yourself, where in my life am I living asleep? What truth have I not yet dared to name? What part of me is still calling from the dark? Then be still enough to hear the answer. And brave enough to act on it. Because stillness is not the end. It is the beginning of everything that matters. The return to presence. The homecoming to self. The remembrance of what has always been true, you are not broken. You are becoming. Now go. Not to search. But to see. Not to perform. But to be. And in that being, quietly, fully, unshakably, you will find what no teacher, no book, no voice can give you, your own awakening. The unconscious no longer rules here. You do.